In this video, you will see AI images of how the Harry Potter characters are described in the books. Harry has a thin face, round glasses, and a thin scar on his forehead. He inherited the shape and color of his mother, Lily's, bright green eyes, but in every other way he takes after his father, James. He has jet black hair which grows unruly when it is getting long. Hermione has light skin, brown eyes, large front teeth, and lots of bushy brown hair. Her front teeth were enlarged by a Densagio hex, but she had them put back shorter than they originally were. Hermione looked tanned after a holiday. Ron is very tall and lanky with red hair and blue eyes. He has a pale, freckled complexion, a long nose, and big hands and feet. Draco is a tall, slender boy with a pale, pointed face, sleek blonde hair, and ice gray eyes. Ginny has typical Weasley traits, flaming red hair and a freckled complexion. She is of petite stature, commented on by several characters, and has bright brown eyes like her mother. Neville has a round face. He is chubby, short, and has blonde hair. Seamus has sandy hair, pale skin, and brown eyes. Dean has dark hair and dark skin, appearing to be of African descent, and is even taller than Ron Weasley due to the fact that he has a long neck. Cho is an extremely pretty girl with long, shiny dark hair, a freckled nose, and being a head shorter than Harry Potter. Like the other Weasleys, Fred and George have flaming red hair and are described as being on the shorter, stockier side, like their second older brother Charlie. Luna is described as having straggly, waist-length, dirty blonde hair and a dazed, dreamy look on her face. Cedric is tall and very good-looking. He is bulky and well-built, which is unusual for a Seeker because they are typically smaller and lighter. He has dark hair, gray eyes, and a straight nose. Fleur was a stunningly beautiful girl with golden hair, large blue eyes, and a light, airy figure. Victor was a tall, thin, sallow young man with dark hair and eyes. He had a large, curved nose that he inherited from his father, a sharp profile, thick, black eyebrows. At the age of 11, Dudley has smooth blonde hair and watery blue eyes. He is very large and looks very much like his father, Vernon, with a chubby pink face, and he hardly shows any neck. Albus Dumbledore is tall and thin, with silver hair and beard so long that they can be tucked into his belt. He has a very long and crooked nose that looks as if it has been broken at least twice. After he regains his body, Voldemort was described as having pale skin, a chalk-white, skull-like face, snake-like slits for nostrils, red eyes, and cat-like slits for pupils, a skeletally thin body, and long, thin hands with unnaturally long fingers. Professor McGonagall is described as being tall, severe-looking, and has dark hair usually tied up in a bun. Snape is described as a thin man with sallow skin, a large hooked nose, and yellow, uneven teeth. He has shoulder-length, greasy black hair which frames his face, and cold black eyes. He wears black flowing robes which give him the appearance of an overgrown bat. Sybil Trelawney always wears very large glasses that makes her eyes appear several times larger than they actually are, has a soft and misty voice. She is very thin and is always draped in a finely woven, shiny shawl. Hagrid was almost twice as tall as a normal man, and at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed, and so wild. Long tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid most of his face. He has hands the size of dustbin lids, and his feet in their leather boots were like baby dolphins. Flitwick is described as a small old wizard with a white beard who needed to stand on a pile of books to teach. Professor Sprout was described as being a squat little witch with short, gray, wavy hair. She usually wore a patched and battered hat. Sirius was a tall man with long, black hair and gray eyes. Several times during the series, Sirius is stated to be very good-looking and carelessly handsome prior to his imprisonment. Bellatrix was described as a tall woman with long, thick, shining black hair. She had thin lips, dark, heavy-lidded eyes, and a strong jaw. She had the classic great good looks and arrogant bearing common for members of the House of Black. Vernon was described as a big, beefy man with a large purple face. He had thick, dark hair, a bushy black mustache, with hardly any neck and mean little eyes that narrowed to slits when he was angry. Petunia is thin and blonde with nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which comes in very useful when she's spying on the neighbors over the garden fence. Lupin has a young face in his mid-30s and light brown hair with flecks of gray. But because of the suffering he endures being a werewolf, he often looks tired and paler, and his face has lines on it. He usually wears shabby clothing. Nymphadora had a pale, heart-shaped face, dark, twinkling eyes, and short, spiky hair that was a violent shade of violet. Peter Pettigrew has grubby skin, thin hair, and a bald patch. He looks like he has lingering rat-like features even when he is human, including a pointed nose and tiny eyes. Molly is short and plump, with red hair and a kind face. Arthur is a thin man, going bald, but the little hair on his head is as red as any of his children's. James was a tall, thin man with hazel eyes and untidy black hair that stuck up at the back. Lily was a beautiful woman with thick, dark red hair that fell to her shoulders and almond-shaped, bright green eyes. Apparently, her eyes were extremely distinctive, because every person who knew Lily would always see them in her son, Harry. Lucius has a pale, pointed face with pale blonde hair and cold, pale gray eyes. Narcissa Malfoy is described as tall, slim, nice-looking, and very pale, with blue eyes, long blonde hair, and a clear, cold voice. Her hair coloring thus differs from most of the House of Black, who generally have dark hair, though Narcissa does possess the arrogant good looks characteristic of her family. Dobby was short with a long, thin nose, bat-like ears, and large, bulging green eyes. He wore an old pillowcase in place of clothing. Moody had dark gray, grizzled hair. He also had a wooden leg that was described as having a clawed foot. His eyes, however, were described as his most shocking feature. One was small and dark, while the other was a vivid electric blue magical eye that moved. Professor Quirrell was a young man with pale white skin. When Quirrell returned from his sabbatical in Albania, one of his eyes developed a twitch and he appeared quite pale and anxious and frequently stuttered. At the start of the term, he was wearing a purple turban. He was usually trembling and prone to fainting. Professor Slughorn is described as an enormously fat, bald old man with a walrus-like mustache. Lockhart was considered very good-looking, a fact he knew. He was very vain. He had wavy blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Dolores Umbridge had a broad, flabby face, a wide, slack mouth, and little neck. Her eyes were bulging and pouchy, and in her mousy brown hair she often wore a black velvet bow, which reminded Harry of a fly perched dangerously above a toad, furthering Umbridge's toad-like characteristics.